Corbin and Corbin legal team, fighting for the rights of the people, that father-daughter team, investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal, providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it, exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas, working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective, a team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom, investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple: to obtain the favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
All right. Yes, glad that you could be with me again today. And I'm glad I had some time to be with you because I want to talk to you about something that's really important. I want to talk to you today about a legal issue. And before I get into it, let's make sure everything is going well. I'm going to wait for somebody to text me that all is going well. Please, someone just let me know that all is going well before I put in my headphones. Let me know. Everything is good, just got confirmation. All right, so I guess I don't need my headphones. So let's get into this. I want to read you something. First of all, the topic today, and welcome again. The topic today is simply, don't talk to the police. And when I say police, I mean all law enforcement. Police, detectives, sheriffs, prosecutors, investigators, bailiffs, anyone associated with law enforcement, especially if you are the subject of a criminal investigation. If you're being investigated for committing a crime, I am not lying to you when I tell you that the single worst thing that you can do is talk to the police. That's the single worst thing that you can do. Talk to the police. It is the absolute single worst thing that you can do is to talk to the police if you are the subject of a criminal investigation. Now, everybody talks about not snitching. Well, don't snitch on yourself. Even if you believe you're innocent and you've not committed any crime, yet the police wants to talk to you about some criminal investigation where you're the subject of that investigation, do not do it. Don't you dare do that. I don't care what you're thinking to yourself or what someone tells you. Listen to me. I've been practicing law now for over 13, going on 14 years. I've represented probably thousands of criminal defendants. And of course, many of you now know that my daughter and I practice together. She used to be a prosecutor before she joined me. And if she was up here with me today, she would tell you the same thing. Don't talk to the police if you're the subject of a criminal investigation. Now, please, I need you to do two things before I go further. Please host a watch party and share this video. You may be doing someone a huge favor. In my legal practice and in Chloe and I's, my legal practice, our law firm today, when people end up getting the bad outcomes, it is usually because they talked to the police before they got us involved. Other than that, we typically get, not in all cases, but in most of our cases, we get very good outcomes. I got very good outcomes when I was a solo practitioner. And I say not in all cases because otherwise I would be guaranteeing an outcome. We don't guarantee an outcome because we can't. We never know what could happen, whether we go to trial or try to settle cases. But I'm trying to let you know that I've been doing this long enough. I know what I'm doing. And if folk don't go and talk to the police prior to contacting us, we typically get good outcomes. So the flip side of that is true. I'm saying the people who have ended up in prison for long stints, not only with me as an attorney and Chloe, but with other lawyers, are the ones who confessed, or not only confessed, but talked to the police and made certain admissions that were all used against them in a court of law. Now, let me read something to you from a very famous case, Miranda versus Arizona, 384 U.S. 436. Miranda versus Arizona, 384 U.S. 436 is the citation. I believe this case was handed down in 1966. And I'm not going to read through the case, but I'm going to read something that is critical in this case. It says, no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Listen at that language. No person shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself. In other words, as I said earlier, don't snitch on yourself. Don't snitch on yourself. Don't be a witness against you. No person shall be compelled, forced. The government cannot force you to be a witness against yourself. no person shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself, and that the accused shall have the assistance of counsel. Rights which were put in jeopardy in that case through official overbearing. These precious rights were fixed in our Constitution, and I'm referring to the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment. The framers of the Constitution would not ratify it until it had certain rights protecting people, one of which was the Fifth Amendment, which again prohibits the government from compelling you to be a witness against yourself. These rights were fixed in our Constitution only after centuries of persecution and struggle. Constitution was ratified 1776, 77, somewhere along there, but it wasn't until 1966 that Miranda was handed down. And in the words of Chief Justice Marshall, John Marshall, they were secured, these rights, one of which is the right that you don't be a witness against yourself. Chief Justice John Marshall said they were secured for ages to come and designed to approach immortality as nearly as human institutions can approach it. That sounds to me like they took this very seriously. They wanted to enshrine in our Constitution and to make it clear that the government could not force anyone to be a witness against themselves, to implicate themselves. You have the right to remain silent. And I'm telling you, I'm warning you, if law enforcement is wanting to investigate you and want to interview you as a part of their investigation, I'm warning you not to talk to them. Don't you think for a second that you can out-talk and talk your way out of a criminal investigation once the state or the federal government gets its focus on you. These investigators and prosecutors and detectives are very, very, very skilled at getting folks to say damaging things against themselves. Damaging. And that is a big part of the reason why the framers said, we're going to put this in the Constitution, that they cannot compel a person to talk. And we know that folks say to themselves, well, I'm going to go ahead and talk to the police unaccompanied by an attorney, without counsel present, because they may help me out if I talk to them. Or they may, may think that I'm guilty if I don't talk to them. Or, I really didn't do anything, so why not talk to them? Or sometimes people have told us they talk to law enforcement because they feel they have to. Well, if you're listening to me, you should now know that you don't have to. They cannot force you to. They cannot force you to. Pursuant to the Fifth Amendment, you cannot be forced to talk to law enforcement. If they do force you, coerce you, or any of that, then they're violating your constitutional rights. Okay? You cannot expect any good to come from you sitting down and allowing yourself to be interviewed by law enforcement if you're the subject of a criminal investigation. Nothing good is going to come out of that. Now, one of the requirements of Miranda, this case that I'm talking about, the two requirements before they are obligated to even warn you, they're obligated, law enforcement is obligated to warn you before you talk to them. And that is when you are in custody. You're in custody. And that doesn't just mean when you're at the jailhouse or when you have handcuffs on. You can be in custody and not know that you're in custody. You see, if you have a reasonable basis for thinking that you're in custody, you may be in custody. Although you're not in handcuffs, or you're not at the jailhouse, you're not sitting in the back of a police car, and you still may be in custody or detained. I had a guy who was charged with a serious crime, and he was never handcuffed. He was not at the police station. He was not sitting in the back of a police car. He was standing outside of his car, and he was in custody. He made statements. I was able to get those statements thrown out of court. I was able to get the judge to suppress those statements because the police detained him and began to ask him questions without reading him the Miranda warnings. Now listen to the warnings. They should go something along this line. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Let's stop right there. They're telling you right there, they will use every word that you say to them against you to prosecute yourself. And it was in this Miranda case that the Supreme Court said to law enforcement, before you begin questioning someone that you have in custody, you got to warn them that they have the right to remain silent, that anything they say can and will be used against them, and that they have the right to a lawyer. And if they can't afford a lawyer will be appointed to them. They must warn them of that first. And yet some people still go right on, even hearing those warnings, go right on and still talk to the police. Just think about it. Now, a couple nuances. And this is not legal advice for anybody. I can't get into all the nuances of Miranda and many other cases having to do with self-incrimination and the Fifth Amendment and so forth. I can't get into that. But there are two I want to mention. Now, the police doesn't have to give you any warning unless those two things are in place. First, that you're detained or you're in custody. In other words, suppose a police officer just walks up to you and starts asking you questions. No detention, no custody, haven't said stay here, didn't say any of that. Just walk up to you and start talking to you. And you start voluntarily talking back. and there is no indication that you're detained or you're in custody. They don't have to give you warnings, Miranda warnings in that situation, because you're voluntarily hanging yourself. Okay? And so they use that, they know that. So what they'll do is initially is just try to have a conversation with you. Because if you voluntarily talk with them and they've not detained you or not placed you in custody, they don't have to warn you. As long as you stand there or sit there or whatever the case may be and talk with them voluntarily. Okay? Now, how do you know if you're detained or not? Well, if you're in custody, you know you are. If you're down at the police station in a locked room, you know you are, right? But suppose none of that's going on. Well, we look at all the circumstances. If you got, for example, 3 or 4 different police officers standing around you and they got kind of a bubble around you and so forth, and they're talking to you and you're probably detained in that situation. But again, let's suppose that's nothing like that is going on. It is really a voluntary conversation. Well, a good way to find out if you're detained is to simply ask the officer, may I leave? If he says yes, then you're not detained. You're not in custody. And not only, and you should at that point walk away or drive away, whatever the case may be. But you need to do it, and you should do it fast. Because voluntarily standing up there and talking to that officer and you're not in custody, you're going to likely say stuff to get you hung by your tongue. Listen, this is so important that if the police wanted to talk to me and I knew I was innocent, I wouldn't talk with them. I mean, if I knew I had not done what they said, I wouldn't talk with them. I would immediately request an attorney. And that brings me to the second thing. Although you have the right to remain silent, the Fifth Amendment and these Miranda warnings are not self-executing. What does that mean? That means that just by being silent is not enough to invoke the Fifth Amendment. You must say to them, I want a lawyer. At that point, they should stop the questioning and get you a lawyer, because you just invoked your Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate. So just being silent, just saying, well, just putting your head down and just getting silent is not enough. There is a case right here, happened in Texas, of a man who was being interrogated, and he refused to answer the questions. But then when they asked him one specific question, a question having to do with ballistics, he got silent, thinking that he was invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. But guess what happened? At trial, the prosecutors brought up the fact that he got silent when they asked him about ballistics, and the prosecutor argued to the jury that his silence in that instance meant that he committed the crime. Okay? So you must affirmatively say, I want a lawyer. And they should stop at that point. Okay? And they also should have you sign a waiver. If you insist on going down this road of talking to them against what I'm telling you and what the Fifth Amendment, the rights you have under the Fifth Amendment, and you insist on, they should get you to sign a waiver or at least have it videotaped. And most of those interviews will be videotaped. Even if you're not down at the police station, oftentimes the police officer's wearing that body cam. And you're likely seeing all sorts of things on that body cam that's going to hurt you. And by the way, if you end up in jail and you get on the telephone and you start talking to family and this one and that one about what happened in your case, I'm telling you that they record those conversations and they will be used against you in your prosecution. And if you're in jail, you shouldn't talk not only to no law enforcement, you shouldn't talk to jailmates, cellmates, because many of them will snitch you out to help their case. So you need to be quiet, period. Only thing you need to say is, I want a lawyer. How many words? I want a lawyer. Those 4 words may keep you out of prison for a long time. I want a lawyer. You may be as guilty as I don't know what, but you still should not talk with police. Ease your conscience in another way, but don't confess. There is no upside to you confessing. None. Ease your heart some other kind of way, but not confessing to the police, because they're not going to have, they're not going to be like your pastor, your priest or whatever, and pray for you and keep it confidential and you keep it moving. No. They're recording it, they're writing it down, and it will be presented to the fact finder, be it a judge or jury or prosecutor. Prosecutors are not fact finders, but if you do a plea bargain, I assure you what you say to the police officer during your confessional is going to end up in the hands of the prosecutor. Okay? Don't talk to the police. Say, I want a lawyer. 4 little words. I want a lawyer. Chloe and I have looked at so many videos of people talking to law enforcement. And it's always astounding the things that these detectives will do to make people feel comfortable. It is not what you think. It is not what you see on TV. It's not that way. It's not that way. I think about the movie, I believe it's Boys in the Hood. I can't think of the actors. Is it Boys in the Hood? Maybe Compton. It may be Compton. It's a movie from the 90s. And Bill Duke is a detective in the movie. I think he directed and produced the movie. And Lawrence Tate is one of the actors in the movie. And the scene that I'm talking about is when they got Lawrence Tate's homeboy in the interrogation room, and Bill Dukes is interviewing and interrogating him, and he's sitting in this dark room, and they're at opposite ends of the table, and Bill Dukes' character says, "You know I got you. You know I got you, right? I got you. I got you. I got you. You know I got you, right? I got you." And then in some other movies, you might see a detective slam his hand on the table, and sometimes they slam him up against a wall. Well, I'm sure that happens as well. We know that happened in the Central Park 5 case, those cases. We know those young men were coerced into confessing. Sometimes there have been cases where black men especially have been tortured to confess. Okay? So I'm certainly not saying that doesn't happen. But most detectives nowadays, at least the ones that we've seen, they're being trained to approach it very differently. They're being trained to win the confidence of the person. And they'll laugh and talk. They'll cry. I literally have seen some quote scripture and try to just get into the good graces of the person they're wanting to confess. And then they'll slowly begin to move the conversation toward the situation. And the person is sitting there, and a lot of times it's a young person. It's an unsuspecting young person a lot of times who will end up, but even older people, trust me, even older people will do it as well, because they're sitting there thinking, what is the police officer going to think, or the detective, if I don't talk to them? They're going to think I'm guilty. Or they're thinking they will help me out if I be honest. Because your mom always told you to be honest. And your Sunday school teacher and your preacher told you to always be honest. And this is not a matter of honesty or dishonest, because you don't have to be dishonest, because you don't have to talk. I'm advising you not to talk. I'm not advising you to be honest or dishonest. I'm advising you to not talk. Not talk. I want a lawyer. Those are only 4 words you need to say. I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer. That may save you or someone you know from serving a long prison term. I want a lawyer. Remember, you just can't sit there silent. You got to invoke your right. And the only 4 words you need to say to make it clear, give me a lawyer. Something to that effect. Give me a lawyer. I want a lawyer. I'm not talking no more. I want a lawyer. Get me a lawyer. Okay? Now, there are some states that require doing traffic stops for you to give basic information. Police officers here in Texas can, you should give them your basic identification, like your name, your address, that sort of stuff. You're doing a traffic stop, you are, because you can be charged for not doing that. It's called failure to ID. Okay? But that's it. You don't have to go any further than that. Now, chances are you're going to get arrested, but don't fear getting arrested. You can get out of jail. But if you talk, you're probably still going to get arrested. And what you said is going to probably result in you going to prison if it's a serious offense, or jail if it's a misdemeanor offense. So you would have done better just to have kept your mouth shut and went to jail, because you're going to go to jail anyway. They're not going to give you a break. That's not what they're sworn to do. They're not going to do that. They're going to lock you up either way, and then use everything you said to prosecute you. And we know that that is especially true if you are African American. You may get a break if you're white, but if you black, you're going to get most likely the most harshest treatment of the law. The most serious, you're going to be charged with the most serious thing. The prosecutor's likely going to take the most harshest approach. So you have to be, you as a black person, you have to be extra careful about not talking. Okay? Now, always in your handling, dealings with the police, be respectful. I see a lot of young folks and other folks when they're being stopped, they get disrespectful. I'm not advising you to be disrespectful. You can say, I want a lawyer. You can say that respectfully. Police officer may not like it. They still may get disrespectful. But since they're the ones who got the guns in most cases, it's incumbent upon you to try to de-escalate the situation. So I'm kind of having this thing we call the talk with you right now, because again, we know that things can go real bad for us blacks, especially us black men. So I'm really wanting to just stress this. I'm taking my time to stress it because I quite frankly just see a lot of people who we can't help them because of things they said before they got us involved. We try, we do everything we can. We still try to get the statements thrown out. We work hard to get them thrown out. We've had situations where, we didn't have a legal leg to stand on because maybe they voluntarily talked or I've had clients to write out confessions and give it to law enforcement. You see, it's hard to undo that. If you testify against yourself, if you confess, your words count more than anybody against you, than anyone else's words. But, we still have gotten, again, I had a guy who, yes, he wrote out a confession, wrote it out, gave it to the prosecutors. I was able to get that statement thrown out and got him out of jail, and he was not convicted of that crime. I've had several instances of that, but those are rare. Best thing to do is to say those 4 words: I want a lawyer. In the state of Texas, it could be something as simple as my name is Charlie Brown, my address is such and such and such, and I want a lawyer. If you're the subject of a criminal investigation. Okay? And let me just throw this in. If you know you got contraband in your house or your car, and the police ask to search your house or your car, don't consent to that search. Make them get a warrant, because the warrant may be faulty. And after you get in the court system and have your lawyer, the lawyer may be able to fight whatever they found in your car or house because maybe of a faulty warrant or something. I don't know. But don't consent to it, because once you consent, you've waived all of your rights relating to that search. Don't consent. You don't have to consent. And don't think by consenting, the police is going to say, okay, well, since you consented, that means you probably don't have anything in your car or house. So you know what? I'm not going to search. That's not going to happen. they're going to search. And if you got something, they're likely going to find it, and they're going to use it to prosecute you. So what good did it do? How did you help yourself consenting? You don't even have anything to argue. You didn't give your lawyers anything to argue afterwards, after you get your case in court. Don't talk to the police. Someone said, well, what about folks who are afraid to ask for a lawyer because they don't have the money to pay for a lawyer? Well, like I said in the warnings, the Miranda case said that they have to inform you that if you can't afford a lawyer, the court system will appoint you a lawyer. Okay? So you don't have to afford one. You just ask for one. That stops the interview. And if you're indigent, if you can't afford a lawyer, you will be given a lawyer. Now, yeah, again, you may end up going to jail if you're sitting there thinking, well, I just talked because I didn't want to go to jail. Look, if you talk, you're going to jail anyway. They're still going to arrest you. If not then, later. Okay? Don't talk to the police. That's my message. Don't talk to the police. Share this with your friends and family. You may save them time in prison. All right, I'm out.